The air in Chorus Nine's barracks stank of sweat, metal, and blood, the scent of captivity. Rows of Warborn sat in silence, sharpening blades or adjusting their armor, their movements mechanical, their eyes deadened by years of servitude. Dane Kale, clad in the battered combat gear of a Dominion enforcer, leaned against the cold steel wall, his fingers tightening into fists. 5 centuries. That's how long humanity had been shackled beneath the Vrake Dominion, forced to fight in wars not their own, slaughtering for an empire that saw them as useful animals. And Dane was one of their best killers. He had lost count of the battles he'd fought, each one leaving its scars across his body and soul. His fists clenched tighter. The Vrake bred humanity for war, but denied them the right to fight for themselves. Not anymore. A barely noticeable vibration hummed against the small datapad in his gauntlet, a coded signal, short and sharp. The message was clear. It was time. Dane rose to his feet, his 6'3" frame casting a long shadow across the dim barracks. His squad, Callum Riggs, the wisecracking demolitions expert, and Lyra Voss, the deadliest sniper in the sector, exchanged glances before standing. They didn't need words. They had all been waiting for this. With slow, deliberate steps, Dane crossed the barracks, his boots echoing against the steel floor. He approached the towering Vrake Warden, a hulking insectoid creature with glistening armored plates and soulless black eyes. "You are needed for deployment, Warborn," the Warden hissed in its guttural tongue. "The Dominion calls." Dane stared at the alien with cold defiance, his lips curling into something dangerously close to a smile. "No." The Warden hesitated. Warborn never refused orders, never defied. But before it could react, Dane's hand shot forward like a viper, grabbing the creature's throat. With a sharp twist and a sickening crack, the Warden collapsed in a heap, its segmented limbs twitching in death. The barracks erupted into chaos. Alarms wailed. Guards stormed in, plasma rifles raised, only to be met with explosive resistance. Callum had already wired the entrance with charges, the blast sending alien bodies flying as he let out a wild laugh. Lyra vanished into the shadows, her rifle dropping targets with silent, deadly precision. Dane, still standing over the fallen Warden, ripped the alien's plasma blade from its corpse and turned to face the incoming Dominion forces. His heart pounded with something he hadn't felt in years. Freedom was no longer a distant dream. The Warborn had waited centuries for this moment, and the rebellion had begun. The air reeked of burnt metal and ozone. The alarms blared across Chorus 9, the deep red glow flashing through the corridors as the Dominion forces scrambled to contain the impossible. A Warborn rebellion. Dane Kale pressed against a bulkhead, gripping the stolen Vrake plasma blade as his squad advanced through the steel corridors. Behind him, Callum Riggs sprinted forward, tossing a small cylindrical charge toward the next security checkpoint. "Fire in the hole," Callum roared. The explosion ripped through the corridor, sending charred Vrake enforcers flying. The Dominion soldiers, tall, insectoid warriors with exoskeletal armor, were powerful but predictable. Their rigid military doctrine had never accounted for human adaptability, cunning, and sheer audacity. Dane surged forward, striking down a staggering Vrake with a brutal slash, his blade shearing through its carapace like wet paper. To his left, Lyra Voss had already lined up her next shot. Her sniper rifle gave a whispered hiss, and another Vrake officer crumpled to the ground before it could give new orders. "We need to move, fast," Lyra said, her voice calm but edged with urgency. "Command is rallying reinforcements from the orbital garrison." Dane glanced toward the hangar bay doors ahead. Their escape plan hinged on a single stolen gunship, a captured Dominion transport that Sarah Vale's contacts had smuggled onto Chorus 9. But first, they needed to get past the final security checkpoint, and the kill squad waiting on the other side. Before he could signal his team, a deep, guttural voice thundered through the station's intercom. "Warborn scum." Dane's blood ran cold. He knew that voice. Overseer Varrock. The Vrek general had personally trained thousands of Warborn into submission, breaking them with brutal discipline. Dane had been one of them. But not anymore. You are nothing, Varrock's voice dripped with venom. You are tools, weapons forged for battle. And weapons do not question their masters. Dane's grip tightened on his blade. Callum. Lyra. His voice was calm, but deadly. We proved that bastard wrong. The bulkhead doors ahead slammed open, revealing a dozen heavily armed Dominion warriors in formation. Taller, stronger, and bred for war. Dane only smiled. Kill them all. The battle exploded in an instant. Callum rolled forward, dropping a thermal charge in the center of the squad. The explosion sent shockwaves through the hall, disorienting the Dominion enforcers just long enough for Dane and Lyra to tear into them like reapers. Dane moved like a storm, parrying, slashing, striking. A lifetime of forced battle honed into ruthless efficiency. He ducked under a plasma spear, drove his blade into a Vrek's stomach, then ripped it free in a spray of black blood. Within 60 seconds, it was over. Dane turned toward the hangar doors, where their stolen gunship hummed to life. The rebellion had only just begun, and the inferno had ignited. The stolen Dominion gunship roared through the skies of Chorus 9, its engines howling as Dane gripped the controls, weaving through the anti-air fire that streaked up from the surface like vengeful spears. The entire planet was in chaos. Fires raged across the industrial sectors. Dominion patrols scrambled to contain the uprisings, and from every Warborn barracks, the sounds of battle cries and defiance filled the air. They had done it. They had lit the spark. Now they had to survive the fire. 2 interceptors inbound. Lyra called from the gunship's tactical display, her sniper rifle resting across her lap as she tracked their pursuers. Dane didn't need to look. He could feel the vibration of the targeting locks crawling over their hull like death itself. Callum, tell me you've got something for them, he barked. Something. Callum grinned from the co-pilot's seat. Dane, I've got something that's going to ruin their whole damn day. With a flick of a switch, the ship's rear launch bay snapped open, and Callum's modified proximity charges, wired from scavenged Dominion explosives, dropped into freefall. The pursuing Vrek fighters didn't stand a chance. The first interceptor tried to swerve away. Too slow. The explosion detonated in its wake, sending it into a wild spin before slamming into a fuel tower. The second fighter, caught in the debris field, clipped its own wing and spiraled toward the city below. Dane didn't wait to watch it burn. One battle at a time. We're 5 minutes from the jump point, Lyra reported. Sarah's waiting for us at the hidden station. Sarah Vale, the rebellion's mastermind. Dane had never met her in person, only through encrypted messages and intercepted Dominion data leaks. But he already knew one thing. If humanity had any chance of taking back the stars, she was the one who could see the path forward. Let's hope she's ready for us, Dane muttered, adjusting the course. But the Dominion wasn't done with them yet. A warning light flared red on the console. Something big was coming. Before he could react, a Vrek battlecruiser, a Leviathan-class warship, descended from orbit, its massive bulk casting a shadow over the ruins of Chorus 9. Damn it, Callum cursed. They're bringing in the big guns. Dane's mind raced. A full warship meant total blockade. There was no way they could fight something that size with just a stolen gunship. Unless a plan formed. Crazy. Insane. But it just might work. He turned to Callum and Lyra. We're not going around them. His eyes burned with resolve. We're going straight through. Callum grinned. Lyra just sighed and checked her rifle. Typical Dane, she muttered. Engines roared to full power. The Warborn were not done fighting yet. The Leviathan-class warship loomed in their path, a behemoth of blackened steel and alien power, its ion cannons already charging. Dane gritted his teeth as the targeting systems locked onto their stolen gunship. They were flying headfirst into a wall of death, and every rational thought screamed at him to turn back. But retreat was not an option. "Dane, I hope to hell you have a plan," Callum shouted, frantically adjusting the ship's power distribution, "because right now it looks like we're about to get atomized." Dane's fingers danced over the controls, flipping manual overrides. The Leviathan was slow, methodical, built for overwhelming force, but that also meant it had blind spots. "We're taking the trench run," Dane said. Lyra snapped her head up from the targeting display. "You're serious?" Dane's voice was cold, deadly. The Leviathan's main cannons opened fire, massive plasma lances screaming through the void. Dane jerked the gunship into a dive, skimming just meters above the warship's armored hull, dodging turret fire so close he could see the heat shimmer through the cockpit glass. "They can't bring the big guns to bear this close," Dane said, weaving between massive spires of ship plating. "We get under their defenses, and we make for the hangar." Callum's eyes widened. "Oh, hell no. We are not boarding a Dominion warship." "Callum," Dane's voice was like iron, "would you rather be vaporized?" Callum considered that for exactly 1 second before flipping open the weapons panel. "All right, fine. But when this goes sideways, I get to say, I told you so before we die." Dane ignored him and pushed the throttle to its limit. The ship roared through the warship's underbelly, narrowly dodging turret fire. Lyra picked off gunners as they tried to track them, her rifle singing death with every shot. Then the hangar doors loomed ahead, a massive opening into the Leviathan's belly, where Dominion dropships and fighters waited. Dane's jaw clenched. "Brace." The gunship punched through the hangar shields, turbulence shaking the hull violently as they skidded onto the deck, crashing into a stack of Dominion cargo containers. Alarms screamed. The entire hangar bay exploded into motion. Vrake soldiers swarmed the deck, weapons raised, their exoskeletal armor gleaming under red emergency lights. Dane ripped his harness free, grabbing his stolen plasma blade. "All right," he growled. "Let's take their damned ship." Lyra snapped her rifle up. Callum armed his last explosive charge, and the three charged into the fire. The Dominion thought humanity was broken, defeated, beaten into servitude. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The hangar bay erupted into chaos. Dominion enforcers rushed forward, weapons raised, their guttural battle cries echoing through the cavernous steel chamber. Plasma fire lanced through the air, streaks of burning blue and white lighting up the battlefield. Dane Kale moved like a force of nature. He lunged forward, twisting under a Vrake soldier's plasma spear, his stolen blade cleaving through exoskeletal armor with a sizzling crack. He kicked the corpse aside before spinning to deflect another incoming strike. To his left, Lyra Voss had already taken to the high ground, scaling a maintenance catwalk above the hangar. Her rifle whispered death with every shot, picking off Dominion officers before they could rally their forces. "And Callum, hold the hell still, you oversized cockroaches." Callum bellowed, hurling an impact grenade into a cluster of charging Vrake. The explosion ripped through their ranks, sending bodies flying in all directions. "I swear, I didn't sign up for suicide boarding missions." "Oh wait, I totally did." Dane ignored the banter. They didn't have time to fight the entire warship. They needed to take control. Fast. His eyes locked onto the command console across the hangar, where a Dominion overseer barked orders into a comlink. If they could seize that terminal, they might be able to access the ship's controls. Dane didn't hesitate. He charged forward, weaving through enemy fire. The overseer saw him coming, its black, insectoid eyes narrowing in recognition. It drew its energy staff, the weapon crackling with lethal power. Dane didn't slow down. The overseer lunged, but Dane sidestepped at the last second, twisting his body just past the deadly arc of the weapon. In one fluid motion, he drove his plasma blade straight through the alien's chest, impaling it against the console. With a sickening gurgle, the Vrake collapsed. Dane barely had time to breathe before Callum sprinted up behind him. slamming a hacking device onto the console. "Gim 30 seconds, Callum said, typing furiously. "And by 30, I mean more than 30, so hold the damn line." The Dominion forces surged forward, realizing their control center was compromised. Dane and Lyra fought back to back, cutting down any Vrake that got too close. Then, the hangar doors sealed shut. The alarm klaxons abruptly silenced. Callum grinned. "Guess who has ship-wide controls now?" Dane exhaled, gripping his plasma blade. "Then let's take this damn thing and get the hell out of here." But before they could celebrate, a deep, familiar voice rumbled through the ship's speakers. "Overseer Varrock." "Impressive," the Vrake warlord growled. "But you are still insects in my web." Dane's blood ran cold. They had the ship, but Varrock wasn't going to let them leave alive. The ship's lights flickered, and a deep, resonant hum filled the air as Overseer Varrock assumed manual control of the Dominion warship. Dane's gut tightened. They had taken the ship, but they weren't the only ones inside it. "Dane, we've got a problem," Callum muttered, his fingers still dancing over the hacked control panel. "Varrock just locked down the bridge, and he's overriding my access. We're flying blind." Dane wiped sweat and blood from his brow, his eyes flicking toward the sealed bulkhead that led to the ship's command deck. "Then we take the bridge the hard way." Lyra checked her remaining ammo. "Of course we do," she muttered dryly. "Because fighting a Dominion warlord in his own ship is exactly how I wanted to spend my day." Dane strode toward the bulkhead, his grip tightening around his plasma blade. "Callum, keep us in control of the ship. Lyra, you're with me." Callum nodded, already moving to secure their hacked systems. "Just try not to die, all right?" Dane didn't answer. He was already moving. The doors to the command deck slid open, revealing the massive, towering form of Overseer Varrock. His gleaming black exoskeletal armor seemed to drink in the dim light, and his 4 crimson eyes locked onto Dane with burning hatred. "So," Varrock rumbled, his voice like the grinding of tectonic plates, "the Warborn think themselves free." Dane stepped forward, unshaken. "Not think. No." Varrock's mandibles curled in what might have been a sneer. "Then let's put that delusion to rest." Without warning, Varrock struck. The warlord moved faster than anything that size had a right to, his massive plasma axe cleaving through the air in a blur. Dane barely dodged, rolling aside as the weapon carved a molten scar into the floor. Lyra fired 2 quick shots, but Varrock's personal shielding flared, absorbing the impacts. He was armored like a walking fortress. Dane lunged, swinging his plasma blade toward Varrock's exposed side, but the warlord caught his wrist mid-strike, his crushing grip like a steel vise. "You are still my weapon, Warborn," Varrock hissed, "and I do not tolerate broken tools." Then he hurled Dane across the bridge, sending him crashing through a hollow console. Pain exploded through Dane's ribs, but he forced himself up. He saw Lyra reload, lining up another shot. But Varrock ripped a control panel from the wall and hurled it at her, forcing her to dodge. The warlord turned back to Dane. "You cannot win, human." Dane wiped blood from his lip. "I don't need to win." Then he tapped his gauntlet, activating the ship-wide comms. Callum's voice crackled through every speaker. "Hey, Bugface, you might want to check the engine core." Varrock's eyes widened, just as the entire ship rumbled beneath them. Dane grinned. They hadn't just taken the ship, they'd rigged it to explode. The deck trembled beneath them, a deep, ominous vibration coursing through the ship's spine. Over the comms, Callum's voice crackled with urgency. "Dane, I just overloaded the reactor's containment field. In about 3 minutes, this ship is gonna turn into the galaxy's biggest firework. So if you're not off it by then." "I got it, Callum." Dane snapped, rolling to his feet as Overseer Varrock turned toward him, his crimson eyes blazing with fury. "You think I will fall to a mere trick?" The warlord snarled, his plasma axe ignited, humming with deadly energy. I will tear you apart before this ship burns." Dane spat blood and grinned. "Let's find out." Varrock charge. Dane barely had time to react before the warlord was on him. A blur of motion, a hurricane of destruction. Varrock's axe swung in a lethal arc, and Dane threw himself backward, the heat of the weapon searing the air inches from his face. Lyra fired 3 shots, aiming for weak points in Varrock's armor, but the warlord was too fast. He twisted, deflecting one blast with his gauntlet, then closed the distance, his massive hand clamping around her throat. She gasped, struggling, her boots kicking against the deck. Dane moved without thinking. He lunged, his plasma blade slicing down, but Varrock blocked with inhuman speed, twisting Lyra's body into the strike's path. Dane barely stopped himself before cutting into her. The warlord laughed, his mandibles curling in amusement. "You are weak," he taunted. "You hesitate. That is why humanity fell." Dane's rage burned white-hot. Varrock underestimated them, underestimated what it meant to be Warborn. Dane let go. Instead of fighting against Varrock's grip, he pushed forward, closing the distance, his free hand snapping to his belt. He grabbed Callum's last explosive charge and jammed it between Varrock's armor plates. The warlord's eyes widened in realization. Dane twisted away, grabbing Lyra and yanking her free just as he slammed his fist onto the detonator. Boom! Varrock's torso erupted in flame, molten plasma bursting from his back as he staggered, howling in agony. His armor cracked and melted, smoke pouring from his wounds. For the first time, Overseer Varrock, the butcher of 1,000 human worlds, fell to his knees. Dane didn't hesitate. He plunged his plasma blade straight through Varrock's throat. The warlord gurgled, choking on his own burning insides, before slumping forward dead. Dane wrenched his blade free, breathing hard. Lyra coughed. "You really waited until the last second, huh?" Dane wiped sweat from his face. "We're not done yet." The ship shuddered violently. Over the comms, Callum screamed, "Get off the damn ship now." Dane grabbed Lyra's arm. They ran. They had killed the warlord, but they still had to survive the fire. Dane and Lyra sprinted through the burning corridors, the ship shaking apart around them. Explosions ripped through bulkheads, spewing fire and debris as the overloaded reactor neared critical failure. "Callum, tell me you have an exit," Dane shouted into his comm. Callum's voice crackled back, laced with panic. "Escape pods are a no-go. Varrock locked them before you gutted him. But I got one last trick. Hangar bay now." Dane didn't hesitate. He and Lyra pushed harder, dodging falling steel beams and leaping over flaming wreckage. The blast doors to the hangar slid open, revealing Callum in the pilot seat of a Dominion assault shuttle, engines spooling up. Around him, Dominion fighters lay in ruins, their cockpits shattered by well-placed explosives. "You blew up their fighters," Lyra shouted as they raced toward the shuttle. Callum grinned. "I like my odds better this way." Behind them, a reactor explosion ripped through the ship, sending a fireball racing down the corridor toward them. Dane and Lyra leaked into the open hatch, and Callum slammed the throttle forward. The shuttle screamed out of the hangar, just as the Leviathan-class warship detonated in a supernova of fire and shrapnel. The shockwave hit them hard, sending the shuttle spinning wildly. Warning klaxons blared, gravity shifted sickeningly, and Dane gripped his harness, teeth clenched. "Callum, stabilize us." "I'm trying." Callum barked, wrestling the controls. The stars spun madly, the debris field from the annihilated warship threatening to tear them apart. Then, just as suddenly as it started, they leveled out. The 3 of them breathed in silence, the vast blackness of space stretching before them, the burning husk of the Dominion warship behind them. It was over. Dane let out a slow exhale, staring at the destruction. "We did it." Lyra gave a breathless chuckle. "Yeah, we actually did." Callum tapped the comms panel. Fellas, We're not alone. Dane's stomach tightened. What now? Then he saw it. Hundreds of ships. Not Dominion vessels. Human ships. Refitted freighters, stolen Dominion cruisers, retrofitted warships. An army of the forgotten, the broken, the Warborn. They had been waiting, watching, and now, seeing the Leviathan fall, they knew. The rebellion had begun. The comms crackled. A voice, strong and defiant, echoed across the fleet. This is Commander Ilias of the Warborn Rebellion. Dominion forces are weakened across the sector. The time to strike is now. Dane exchanged a look with Lyra and Callum. They had won their battle. Now it was time for war. For Earth, for humanity, for the Warborn. Dane gripped the flight controls, his voice steady as he answered. Then let's finish this. End of Book 1.